The cold wind of Vora 9 swept through the alien market. Dust, smoke, and voices filled the air. Traders shouted prices, machines buzzed, and the smell of metal and food mixed together. Among the busy crowd sat a small alien girl named Lira. Her sleeves were empty. She was born without hands. Lira tried to stay invisible, but the world never let her forget her difference. Every day people passed by and stared. Some pitied her. Others laughed. She had learned to pick up small things with her mouth or feet, but even that made others mock her. "Look, the no-hands freak is watching," a tall alien boy shouted. His friends laughed, pointing at her as she sat quietly near the fruit stall. The merchant pretended not to hear. Lyra's pale cheeks burned red. She looked down, wishing she could disappear. She tried to ignore them and reached for a fallen apple with her mouth. But the boy kicked it away, sending it rolling into the dirt. The crowd laughed louder. That's when a shadow fell across them. The laughter stopped. Standing nearby was a tall man with human features, broad shoulders, tired eyes, and clothes covered in dust and oil. His name was Aaron, a human mechanic who had arrived on Vora 9 only months ago. Most aliens didn't like humans. They said humans were stubborn, dangerous, too emotional. But Aaron didn't care what they thought. He looked at the group of laughing aliens. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. "Is that funny to you?" he asked. The boys froze, unsure what to say. One of them muttered, "It's not your business, human." Aaron's eyes narrowed. "It is when cruelty becomes entertainment." The boys walked away, pretending to laugh again, but their voices trembled. The crowd went back to its noise, pretending nothing happened. Lira sat silently, unsure what to do. No one had ever defended her before. Aaron crouched down to her level. "You drop this," he said, picking up the dirty apple. He cleaned it with his sleeve and placed it near her lap. "You should eat." She stared at him with wide eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why help me?" He gave a small smile. "Because I can." Then he stood up and left, his heavy boots echoing through the metal streets. Lira watched him disappear into the crowd, her heart pounding. She didn't even know his name. That night she couldn't sleep. The image of the human's calm face stayed in her mind. No one had ever looked at her like that, without disgust, without pity. Only kindness. Far across the city, Aaron returned to his small workshop. The walls were filled with old machines and broken tools. He sat down at his workbench, his hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. He looked at a pile of rusted robotic arms he had been repairing for months. They were useless now, too weak to lift anything heavy. But as he stared at the lifeless metal, he remembered the girl's empty sleeves and her sad eyes. Slowly, an idea began to form in his mind. He stood up and walked toward his tool chest. The sound of metal clinking filled the silence. Sparks flew as he started welding two pieces together. His tired eyes shone with purpose. "If they won't help her," he muttered softly, "then I will." The workshop glowed with blue light as he worked through the night. On the table lay a half-built robotic arm, rough, imperfect, but real. Outside, the streets of Vora 9 slept under the pale light of two moons. Lira sat on the steps of her small shelter, looking up at the sky. The cold wind touched her face and she hugged herself to stay warm. For the first time in her life, she whispered something new to herself, something she had never dared to hope for. "Maybe someone finally sees me." The next morning, when the sun rose, Lira walked back to the marketplace. She searched the crowd for the human with the kind eyes. She didn't know why, maybe to thank him, maybe to see if he was real. She found his workshop at the far end of the street, half hidden behind old metal parts and a faded sign that read, "Repair Station, Human Technician." Inside, Aaron worked silently, sparks flying as he shaped something small and shining on the table. Lira stood at the doorway, afraid to speak. The sound of the machines was loud, but the moment felt strangely calm. Aaron looked up, surprised to see her. He smiled faintly. "You came." She nodded shyly. "I wanted to say thank you." He wiped his hands on a cloth and looked at her empty sleeves. "Lira, right?" Her eyes widened. "How do you know my name?" "You dropped your ID tag yesterday," he said, showing a small metal plate. "You should keep it safe." She took it carefully between her elbows. "Thank you again." Aaron paused for a long moment. Then he said something that made her heart skip a beat. "Tell me, Lira, do you want hands?" The sound of machines stopped. The world went silent. Lira stared at him in disbelief. She almost laughed. "You can't give me that," she said softly. Aaron smiled faintly. Maybe I can try. Outside, the wind howled through the empty streets, but inside that small workshop, something new began. A spark of hope that would soon change both their lives forever. The next morning, the air on Vora 9 was heavy with mist and the smell of rust. Lira stood outside the human's workshop again. She didn't know why she came. Maybe because of his strange promise. Or maybe because for the first time someone had spoken to her like she was not broken. Inside, Aaron was already awake, working with focus and quiet determination. The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the small space. Sparks flashed as he adjusted a glowing blueprint on the wall. When he noticed her shadow at the door, he turned, his face tired but warm. "You came back," he said simply. Lira hesitated. "You said you could give me hands," Aaron nodded. "I said I could try." He motioned for her to come closer. The workshop smelled of oil and electricity. Strange tools hung from every wall. Some looked ancient, others alien in design. Lira looked around nervously. "You build machines?" "Yes," Aaron said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "I used to repair ships for the Terran fleet before I ended up here. But now," he paused and smiled faintly, "now I fix broken things no one else cares about." She blinked, unsure how to answer. "I'm not a thing," he met her eyes. "I know. That's why you deserve better than this world's cruelty." The words hit her like a wave. No one had ever spoken to her that way, kind yet certain. She looked down, unsure what to say. Aaron reached for a small case and opened it. Inside were two delicate robotic fingers, thin, shiny, and trembling with faint blue light. "These are old models. I made them years ago," he said. "But with the right connection, the right nerves, they might move again." Lira stared in awe. "They look alive," he chuckled softly. "Machines only come alive when they're built for someone who needs them." Silence hung between them. Lira finally whispered, "Why help me, human? What do you gain from this?" Aaron leaned back in his chair. His voice dropped low. "Once I had a little sister back on Earth. She was born without arms too. I built her mechanical ones from scrap. She called them her wings." His smile faded slightly. "But she didn't survive the war, maybe. Helping you is how I keep her memory alive." Lira's eyes softened. She felt the pain in his voice. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Aaron shook his head. "Don't be. You're not my past, you're my project now." The faintest smile touched her lips. For the first time, she didn't feel like an object of pity. She felt unseen, but outside not everyone was pleased. The aliens in the marketplace had already started whispering. "That human's working with the no-hands freak," one muttered. "Disgusting. He'll infect her with his madness." Rumors spread fast through the metallic streets. By evening, half the market knew that the strange human was building something for the outcast girl. Some laughed, others frowned. No one believed it would work. Meanwhile, inside the workshop, Aaron began explaining the plan. "I'll need your help," he said. "Your body will have to accept the connection points. That means pain, a lot of it." Lira's throat tightened. "Pain I can handle," she said quietly. "I've lived with it all my life." He nodded in approval. "Good, then we start tomorrow." That night, Lira couldn't sleep again. She sat under the pale moon looking at her empty sleeves. Was she foolish to hope? Was this just another cruel trick life was playing on her? But then she remembered Aaron's calm eyes, his voice when he said, "I can try," and she felt something new, courage. The next morning, she arrived early. The workshop door was half open, the sound of machinery echoing from inside. Aaron had cleared a space and set up a narrow table covered in silver tools. He looked at her and said, "Once we begin, there's no turning back." "I'm ready," she replied firmly. He hesitated for a moment. "You trust me that much?" She gave a small nod. "You're the only one who ever called me more than a freak." Aaron smiled sadly. "Then let's make them see who you really are." He guided her to sit on the table. Small mechanical wires hummed softly as he placed sensors near her shoulders. Lira's heart pounded. Every touch of the cold metal felt like lightning through her nerves. Aaron spoke gently. "We'll take it one step at a time. If it hurts too much, tell me to stop." She closed her eyes. "I won't stop." Outside, a few curious aliens peeked through the window, whispering and snickering. "What's he doing to her?" one said. "Probably turning her into a half-machine monster." But inside, a different world existed, one of trust, risk, And silent courage as Aaron connected the last wire. He said quietly, "This is just the beginning." "Lira," she took a shaky breath. "Then let's begin." The lights dimmed and the machines came alive with a steady hum. Tiny sparks of energy ran across the room. For a moment, the smell of burning metal filled the air. Outside, thunder rolled over Vora 9's metal skies as if the planet itself knew something was changing. And deep inside that small human workshop, a promise was born. One that would soon shake the entire colony and silence every cruel voice that ever called her a freak. The workshop on Vora 9 was no longer silent. Machines hummed, wires sparked, and the sound of Aaron's tools filled the air day and night. Lira sat on the metal table, trembling slightly, as the human adjusted the cables around her shoulders. The light from the hanging lamps reflected off the silver plates he had installed near her upper arms. "Are you ready?" Aaron asked quietly. Lira swallowed hard. "I was ready yesterday." He smiled faintly, impressed by her courage. "Good. Today we test the nerve links." She nodded, though her stomach twisted with fear. Aaron pressed a few buttons on the console beside him. The robotic arms on the table glowed faintly blue, waiting to connect. Lira looked at them, thin, elegant, with tiny wires running like veins through them. They were beautiful, but terrifying. The air buzzed. A small spark jumped from one wire to another. Then Aaron said, "Now." The first connection went in. Lira gasped sharply as pain exploded through her shoulders. It was like fire crawling under her skin. Her body tensed, her vision blurred, and she felt tears sting her eyes. Aaron grabbed her arm gently. "Breathe, Lira. Don't fight it. Let it pass." I can't," she stammered. "It burns." "I know," he said softly. "But this pain means it's working." For a few seconds, she wanted to rip everything off and run away. But then she remembered the laughter in the marketplace, the words that haunted her every night. "No hands, freak." She bit her lip, tears falling silently. "Keep going," she whispered. Aaron hesitated but obeyed. He began attaching the second arm, carefully syncing it to her nervous system. The console beeped in rapid rhythm as if matching the beating of her heart. Outside, the sky darkened with storm clouds. The air crackled with distant thunder. Even the wind seemed to carry a warning. As Aaron worked, sweat ran down his face. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met," he muttered. "Most soldiers couldn't take this kind of pain." Lira gave a weak smile. "I'm not a soldier. I'm just tired of being helpless." Hours passed. Each adjustment brought new waves of pain, but also progress. The robotic arms began to respond faintly to her thoughts, tiny movements, small twitches, weak but real. It was enough to make Aaron whisper in awe. "She's doing it." By evening, the workshop looked like a battlefield, wires everywhere, smoke rising from overheated circuits. Lira's breathing was shallow, her skin pale and damp. Aaron leaned over her, checking her pulse. "Enough for today," he said finally. "No," she gasped, shaking her head. "We're close." Aaron frowned. "You'll collapse if we keep going." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were fierce. "You said pain means it's working. Then let it work." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, just a little more." He turned a dial higher. Electricity surged through the wires, connecting deeper into her nerves. Lira's body jerked violently. Sparks filled the room. The lights flickered, then went dark. For a terrifying moment, there was only the sound of her scream, and then silence. Aaron froze. Smoke rose from the table. "Lira!" he shouted, rushing to her side. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale as frost. He tore off the power cables, his heart racing. "No, no, no." He pressed his ear to her chest, faint heartbeat still there. Relief washed over him. He grabbed a cloth, wiping her face gently. "You stubborn girl," he whispered. "You nearly killed yourself." Minutes later, her fingers twitched slightly. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, but alive. "Did it work?" she whispered. Aaron laughed softly, half from joy, half from exhaustion. "You're still alive, that's a good start." "I felt something," she murmured weakly. "Like they wanted to move." He smiled. "Then we're close." She tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't obey. The robotic arms hung lifeless, still disconnected from her full control. Yet seeing them attached to her body filled her with strange wonder. For the first time, she could see arms where there had been none. Outside, lightning flashed through the night sky, and thunder rolled like a drum. Inside the workshop, the faint glow of the robotic arms shimmered with reflected light. Aaron sat beside her, watching over her like a guardian. "Rest now," he said gently. "You've done enough." Lira's voice was faint but firm. "You'll finish tomorrow?" "Yes," he said. "Tomorrow we make them move." As she drifted to sleep, Aaron leaned back in his chair. His hands were shaking, his tools burned out, but his heart was alive with hope. He looked at the half-lit workshop and whispered to himself, "You'd be proud of me, sis." Outside, unseen by either of them, a group of aliens watched from the shadows. Their eyes glowed in the dark, filled with anger and suspicion. The humans playing with forbidden tech. One hissed, "He'll bring trouble to all of us." Another nodded. "Then maybe we should stop him before he succeeds." The wind howled louder as the watchers disappeared into the night, and in the small, flickering workshop, Aaron didn't know that his act of kindness had already started. A storm far greater than the one outside, one that would soon test both him and Lira beyond anything they had ever imagined. The dawn on Vora 9 came slow and gray. The storm from last night had left everything damp and silent, as if the world itself was waiting for something. Inside Aaron's workshop, the air smelled of metal, oil, and ozone. Lira lay still on the table, her new robotic arms gleaming faintly under the flickering light. Aaron hadn't slept. He sat beside her, his eyes red from fatigue. He'd stayed awake all night, checking the wires, fixing the circuits, and whispering to himself that it had to work. He couldn't let his sister's dream die again, not this time. When Lira stirred, Aaron quickly leaned forward. "Easy," he said gently. "You've been out for hours." She blinked, her vision clearing slowly. Her gaze fell on the silver arms attached to her shoulders. They looked real, smooth, elegant, and alive, but they hung lifeless, unmoving. "They're beautiful," she whispered, her voice weak. Aaron smiled softly. "They're yours now. We just need to make them listen to you." He adjusted a few knobs on the control pad and nodded. "All right, Lira, think of moving your hand. Just think. Don't force it." She stared at the metal fingers and focused. Seconds passed. Nothing happened. Her throat tightened. "It's not working." Aaron shook his head. "Not yet. Try again. Picture your old self before they called you names. Picture reaching for something you wanted." Lira closed her eyes. Memories flashed. An apple rolling on the ground. Laughter echoing in the market. The helpless feeling of having no hands to defend herself. Her jaw clenched. She focused harder, her entire body trembling. Then, click. One finger twitched. Aaron froze, eyes wide. "Do that again," Lira gasped, unsure if she imagined it, but she focused once more. The second finger moved, just barely, but enough to make her heart race. "They moved," she whispered in disbelief. "They moved!" Aaron grinned, unable to hide his excitement. "Lira, you did it!" Her new hands began trembling, small movements at first, then stronger. Metal joints whirred softly as her will connected with the circuits. The fingers curled, opened, and curled again, awkward, unsteady, but real. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I can move them." Aaron wiped his face, trying to hide his own tears. "You're doing it. It's all you." For a moment, Both of them just stared. One human and one alien, both trembling with joy. Then the door suddenly slammed open. An older alien, gray-skinned and stern, stepped in. His clothes marked him as a local official. 2 guards followed. "Human," he barked. "You've been reported for illegal biological modification. What is this?" Aaron stood protectively in front of Lira. "It's not illegal to give someone hope," the official sneered. "Hope? You're playing with forbidden tech. This could infect her system, kill her." "She knew the risks," Aaron replied calmly. "She wanted this." Lira raised her trembling hands for them to see. The metal gleamed in the dim light. "I'm alive," she said softly. "And for the first time, I'm free." The guards shifted uncomfortably. Even they couldn't look away, but the official only scowled. "You think this changes anything? You'll bring trouble to this city, human." "This isn't your world." Aaron's voice hardened. "Then maybe your world needs changing." The tension hung thick in the air. The official turned away sharply. "We'll be watching you." He left, his boots echoing down the metal street. When the door closed, the silence returned, heavy but filled with triumph. Lira looked at her new hands again. "They still feel strange," she murmured. Aaron nodded. "It'll take time. You'll need to learn balance, motion, control." She smiled faintly. "Then teach me." He grinned. "Deal." Over the next few hours, Lira practiced moving her arms. The sound of her laughter filled the workshop for the first time. She knocked over tools, spilled water, even accidentally punched a wall, but she didn't care. Every mistake was proof she was learning. Aaron watched her, his chest swelling with pride. "You're unstoppable," he said. She looked at him, eyes shining. "You didn't just build my hands, Aaron. You built my life." Outside, word spread quickly. Crowds began to gather near the workshop. Some came out of curiosity, others to witness the miracle girl. But not everyone smiled. Jealousy and fear mixed in the crowd's whispers. By sunset, the workshop's window was filled with faces. Lira hesitated, nervous. "They're staring again." Aaron placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Let them. Last time they laughed. This time they'll watch." She turned toward the crowd and slowly raised her new metallic hands into the air. The light from the setting sun reflected off the polished silver, painting her figure in gold and fire. The crowd went silent. Even the wind stopped, and for the first time in her life, no one called her freak. They called her the girl who moved the impossible. As night fell, Aaron stood beside her, looking out the window. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. Lira smiled, her fingers flexing gently. "Then let's see how far we can go." Neither of them noticed the shadow watching from the rooftops, a spy sent by the alien council. Recording every moment, the next phase had already begun. The days after Lira's first movement changed everything. The news of the human who built hands for a freak spread across Voronine faster than fire. The workshop that once stood empty now drew crowds every morning. Some came in wonder, others in disbelief, and many in anger. Lira stayed inside most of the time, practicing. Every day her new arms grew stronger, smoother, more natural. She could hold a cup, lift a wrench, even help Aaron with small repairs. But with every improvement came new whispers from outside. "Unnatural," some aliens muttered. "She's part machine now." "She's dangerous," said others. "What if she loses control?" Aaron ignored them. He had seen worse in his years with the Terran fleet. Fear always followed progress. But even he could feel the growing tension. One evening, while adjusting the sensors on Lira's wrist, he said softly, "They'll never understand what we're trying to do." Lira looked at him, her silver hands resting in her lap. "Then let them watch anyway." He smiled faintly. "You sound like a soldier now." "I learned from one," she replied, eyes glinting with pride. But outside their walls, the situation was getting dangerous. The Alien Council had called an emergency meeting. Leaders from across the city debated whether Aaron's experiment violated planetary biointegrity laws. To them, the human's invention was a threat, a symbol of rebellion and change. Late that night, a messenger arrived at the workshop door. His tone was cold. Human Aaron, by order of the Vora 9 Council, your experiments are to cease immediately. All illegal mechanical augmentations must be surrendered for destruction. Aaron stood silently for a moment, his jaw tight. If you think I'll destroy her hands, you're wrong. The messenger frowned. Then we'll destroy them for you. Aaron stepped forward, his voice low and steady. You'll have to go through me first. The messenger's gaze hardened. Don't test us, human. He turned and left, leaving the warning echoing in the metallic street. Lira had heard everything from the workshop. She stepped out slowly, her eyes wide with worry. They'll come for us, Aaron nodded. I know. Then we should run, she whispered. He looked at her, tired yet resolute. If we run, they win. They'll call you a mistake, a crime. But if we stay... He paused, then smiled faintly. Maybe we show them that miracles don't need permission. That night, neither of them slept. Lira sat by the window, flexing her new fingers, feeling the hum of energy within them. Outside, dark ships patrolled the skies. Every few minutes, bright lights swept across the city. I used to dream, she said softly, of touching the stars. I thought it would never happen because I couldn't even touch the ground properly. But now, she raised her hands to the moonlight, now I just want to protect what you gave me. Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder. Then you're ready for what's coming. By dawn, the sound of engines filled the street. Dozens of armored vehicles surrounded the workshop. Loudspeakers crackled. Aaron of Terra, step out immediately and surrender your illegal subject. Lyra's heartbeat thundered in her chest. They mean me, she whispered. Aaron nodded grimly. Stay behind me. Whatever happens, don't let them take you. The door burst open. Alien soldiers in black armor stormed in, their energy weapons drawn. The leader, a tall, scaled alien with red eyes, sneered. Human, your time here is over. Aaron stepped forward, his voice firm. She's not a weapon. She's proof that kindness is stronger than cruelty. The alien scoffed. Kindness doesn't change the laws of nature. Maybe it should, Aaron shot back. The soldiers aimed their rifles. Take the girl. Lira froze as they advanced, fear flooding through her. Then she remembered his words, don't let them take you. Her hands began to tremble, not in fear, but in fury. The power within the circuits pulsed stronger. When one soldier grabbed her, she moved instinctively. Her new hands caught his weapon and crushed it in half like paper. The room fell silent. Another soldier lunged and Lira pushed him back with a metallic strike that sent him flying. Sparks scattered across the floor. Aaron stared in shock. Lira, you're controlling them perfectly. I'm not afraid anymore, she said, her voice steady, almost fierce. The leader raised his blaster. Enough! He fired. Aaron moved without thinking. He pushed Lira aside, the blast grazing his shoulder. He fell to one knee, clutching the wound. Smoke rose from his jacket. Aaron, she screamed. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself up. Go, run! No, she said firmly. Not again. Her hands glowed brighter, circuits burning with energy. She stepped in front of him, deflecting another shot with a sweep of her arm. The blaster bolt ricocheted off the metal and struck a soldier's armor, knocking him down. The soldiers hesitated, fear creeping into their ranks. Aaron, bleeding but smiling, whispered, You're doing it. Lira. She turned to him, eyes filled with tears and determination. You gave me strength, Aaron, now let me use it. The scene froze for a moment, the human standing wounded, the alien girl glowing with power, the soldiers staring in disbelief. Then, without warning, the building lights flickered, and a voice echoed from outside the city walls. To all who mock the weak, watch what humanity can build when pushed too far. The war for hope had begun. The sky above Vora 9 burned red with storm clouds and flashing sirens. The alien patrol surrounded Aaron's workshop, shouting commands and warnings, but the air inside the building was silent, tense and electric. Lira stood at the center of it all, her new metal hands glowing faintly blue. Aaron leaned against the workbench, blood running down his arm where the laser had grazed him. They'll bring more soldiers, he said through gritted teeth. Lira's eyes hardened. Then we finish this before they do. Outside, the leader barked, Last warning. Surrender the hybrid freak or we'll burn this place to the ground. Aaron laughed weakly. They still think you're weak, he said, looking at her with a proud smile. Let's prove them wrong. Lira stepped forward, the metal floor echoing under her feet. The doors trembled as soldiers prepared to storm in. She took a deep breath and whispered, I was afraid of their eyes once. Not anymore. The doors exploded open in a shower of sparks. 10 soldiers charged in, energy rifles glowing. But before they could fire, Lira moved. Fast, smooth, unstoppable. Her new arms blurred through the air, catching one soldier's weapon mid-shot and twisting it away. Another swung at her with a metal baton, but she caught it barehanded and crushed it. Sparks burst around them like lightning. Aaron watched, awe mixing with fear. She's moving like the machine's part of her, he whispered. Lira spun, deflecting blaster bolts with precise motions. Each strike sent waves of light through her arms, energy pulsing like living veins. Every movement was guided by will, not rage. She wasn't attacking to kill, she was fighting to protect. The leader snarled. Fire everything. Dozens of plasma bolts filled the air. Aaron dove behind a table, shielding his wounded arm. Lira stepped forward again, raising both arms. The built-in shields Aaron had secretly designed activated for the first time. Thin, glowing plates of energy forming around her forearms. The shots hit the shields, scattering harmlessly into blue light. The crowd outside gasped. For a moment, it looked like a miracle. Then one of the energy coils overloaded. A violent spark jumped across the room, setting a machine ablaze. Flames spread, smoke thickened, and the workshop began to shake. Lira, Aaron shouted. It's overheating. I can hold it. She yelled back, her voice fierce but trembling. I can stop them. Not alone. He stumbled forward, reaching the console to reroute power. His hands moved quickly despite the pain. You have to release some of it or it'll burn you alive. I can't, she screamed. If I let go, they'll shoot you. Her arms glowed brighter, almost blindingly white now. The circuits hissed, metal cracking under the stress. The soldiers backed away in fear, blinded by the light. Aaron slammed a switch. The energy burst out of the workshop in a single massive wave, throwing soldiers to the ground and shattering nearby windows. The explosion of light painted the night sky blue, followed by a long silence. When the light faded, the workshop was in ruins. Smoke drifted through broken walls. Lira knelt in the middle of it, her arms dim and cracked, but still attached. Aaron crawled toward her, coughing. You okay? He asked, voice hoarse. She looked at him with trembling lips. I didn't mean to. He shook his head. You saved us. You did what no one thought possible. The ground outside trembled as more troops approached. The alien leader, his armor scorched, shouted, They're fugitives now. Capture them dead or alive. Aaron grabbed his toolkit and what was left of his medical bag. We have to move. Lira helped him up, her hands sparking faintly. I can still carry you, he smiled weakly. You always could. They slipped through a broken wall and into the industrial alleys behind the workshop. The night was full of sirens and flashing red lights, but they moved quickly through the shadows. From rooftops and streets, people watched. Some shouted insults. Others, especially the young, watched in quiet awe. The story of the human builder and the girl with metal hands had already become legend. By the time the soldiers reached the ruins, their targets were gone. Only the shattered remains of the workshop and the scorched mark on the floor told what had happened there. Hours later, deep in the old mining district, Aaron and Lira found shelter inside an abandoned freight hangar. Rain fell through the broken ceiling as Aaron sat against a wall, clutching his shoulder. Lira knelt beside him, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. You should rest, she said quietly. He looked at her, tired but proud. You fought like someone born for it. She shook her head. No, I fought like someone who finally had a choice. He chuckled weakly. That's even better. Lightning flashed outside. Lira turned toward the window, her face half lit by the storm. They'll never stop, will they? Aaron sighed. Maybe not. But every time they tell one of their children about tonight, they'll remember what a human built out of kindness. Lira smiled faintly, looking down at her hands, scratched, glowing, alive. Then we already won. Aaron closed his eyes, exhaustion finally overtaking him. Get some rest, Lira, he murmured. Tomorrow we'll find somewhere new, somewhere that believes in you. As he drifted into sleep, Lira stood by the doorway, watching the rain wash away the smoke and ash from the night's battle. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel cursed or broken. She felt whole, and somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't the end, only the spark before the world changed forever. The sun rose weakly over the horizon of Vora 9, painting the sky in silver and violet. The war sirens had faded, leaving behind the eerie silence of a city that didn't know whether to hate or admire what it had witnessed. The story of the human and the girl with metal hands had spread far beyond the capital now, whispered in markets, sung in hidden corners, and feared in the council's halls. Weeks had passed since the explosion. The council never found Aaron or Lira. They were ghosts now, living among the forgotten ruins in the mining zones far from the city lights. Inside an abandoned hangar, Aaron sat beside a dying fire. His shoulder was fully bandaged, though the wound had left him weak. His once dark hair now carried streaks of gray from exhaustion and pain. Still, there was a quiet pride in his eyes as he watched Lira move about the space. She had changed. The fragile, frightened girl who once hid from laughter was gone. In her place stood a strong young woman with calm eyes and silver arms that gleamed like starlight. She had learned to control every movement perfectly. Her hands were no longer machines, they were hers. "Your balance is flawless now," Aaron said, watching as she lifted a heavy beam with one hand and placed it carefully aside. "You could outwork 10 miners," Lira smiled faintly. "You always say that when you're proud." He laughed softly. "Maybe I am." Outside, the sound of footsteps echoed. Lira froze and turned, her arms raised defensively. A small group of aliens appeared at the doorway, miners ragged and hungry-looking, but not soldiers. "Please," one of them said nervously. "We're not here to fight. We heard about the girl with silver hands." Lira lowered her guard slowly. "You heard wrong if you came looking for trouble." The oldest miner stepped forward, holding a trembling child missing one arm. "We came because we need your help." Lira's expression softened instantly. The boy looked at her with wide, curious eyes. "Are those real?" he asked, pointing to her metallic fingers. Aaron glanced at Lira, giving her a small nod. "Go ahead," he said quietly. She knelt down to the boy's level. Her voice was gentle. "They are real. And they work better than I ever dreamed." She reached out, her metal hand glowing faintly as she touched the broken stump of the boy's arm. The miners watched in silence as she said, "I can make him a new one. But it will take time and parts I don't have." Aaron stood slowly, leaning on a makeshift crutch. "We can find them. There are still scrapyards full of old robotics. If the council won't help, we'll build our own hope." The miners exchanged uncertain glances. "If they catch you—" "They already tried," Lira interrupted firmly, "and they failed." That night the hangar came alive with sound again. The same tools that once built Lira's arms now built others. Small fragile limbs for children who had lost theirs to accidents and war. Aaron guided the work with steady hands, while Lira handled the delicate connections that required precision beyond human skill. Days turned into weeks. More refugees arrived, some broken, some scarred, all seeking the miracle they had heard whispers about. Soon, the hangar wasn't just a hiding place, it became a sanctuary. Children laughed again, testing their new mechanical hands. Mothers wept. Fathers offered what little they had in trade, food, batteries, or just gratitude. And every night Lira and Aaron sat by the fire, too tired to speak but smiling quietly. One evening, as the stars blinked above the ruins, Aaron said softly, "You know, I think my sister would have liked you." Lira looked at him, her eyes glimmering in the firelight. "You never talk much about her." "She was a dreamer," he said. "Believed people could be better than they were. She wanted to build things that healed instead of harmed." He looked at her arms and smiled. Guess she was right. Lira turned toward the stars, the twin moons shining on her silver hands. "You gave me more than arms, Aaron. You gave me a reason to exist." He chuckled softly. "And you gave me back hope." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of distant laughter from the children filled the night air. Then the next morning, everything changed. A transport ship landed nearby, unmarked, silent, and human-made. From it stepped 2 figures in Earth Federation uniforms. The first raised a hand. "Aaron Miles?" Aaron stiffened. "Who's asking?" "We tracked your signal," the officer said. "We saw what you did here. Earth Command wants to offer you a contract to rebuild what you started." "For everyone." Lira looked at him, stunned. "You mean this isn't over?" The officer smiled. "No, it's just beginning. We call it the Hope Initiative. Mechanical limbs for every species, every world that needs them." Aaron looked at Lira, his eyes bright with disbelief. "You hear that?" She nodded slowly, smiling. "Looks like your sister's dream just became a galaxy's promise." Months later, in a shining new academy under Earth's banner, children of all races studied robotics together. On the main wall hung a bronze plaque that read, "In memory of Aaron Miles, the human who believed the broken could still be whole," and beneath it stood a woman with silver arms, teaching a group of wide-eyed alien children how to shape metal into life. Her name was Lira, the girl who once had no hands, now the one who built hands of hope for others. When a little alien girl asked shyly, "Teacher, did a human really build yours?" Lira smiled gently and raised her shining hands toward the light. "No," she said softly. "He built me." The class fell silent, the sunlight catching the silver in her palms like tiny stars. And somewhere beyond the stars, a human spirit smiled, because the world had finally learned what it truly meant to be human.